a different trip this year, we decided to enter the Victorian High Country on the eastern side at Mansfield and travel in a generally easterly direction to a place on the Victorian-New South Wales border known as Groggin. Our path took us past the well-known places such as Cobbler Lake and then Picture Point. We went down the Butcher Country track to the MacAlister River for a refuel at Licola before heading to the Pinnacles and the infamous Billy Goat's Bluff track. Then it was a run to Dargo for another refuel before striking out north to eventually wind our way to Dawson City and then up the Davies Plains track to Groggin to finish the tour. A 5 AM departure from home saw us cover the 850 kilometres to Mansfield in 10.5 hours. We arrived there at 15:30, or 3:30 if you like. After a quick refuel, we headed to our first campsite on the banks of the delightfully named Buttercup Creek. And what a beaut campsite it was. We pitched our tent on a nice grassy area, about 50 metres from the creek. We would have gone closer, but the one other person we shared the place with was already there, and not wanting to be those guys, we kept well clear of him. For us it was an idyllic place to spend Christmas Eve, and the Christmas coloured bird we shared the site with just made it that much more special. We named him Christopher, though I think he was a rainbow lorikeet, not a robin. The next day we headed into the high country proper. These shots were in the vicinity of the imaginatively named Mountain Number 3, and while travelling down Number 3 track to the Mountain Number 3 refuge hut. I kid you not about these names. After a quick drive past of the Pineapple Flat camping area, we took up off the Wild Horse Gap track and down Cobbler track, following the Dandongadale River to a point where we could see the Dandongadale Falls, God that's a mouthful, apparently the highest in the high country. At 4,400 feet, or 1,340 metres, this is the highest we've ever camped, and it's now the second time we've utilised this camp spot. It's nothing spectacular, as trees block any view, but it's a big open grassy area with a lot of firewood, which believe me you need here. From our campsite on the Cobbler Plateau, the very first thing we tackled was the staircase, which is a series of steep, sharp switchbacks. Not towing, they were easy. From there, the first goal of the day was Craig's hut. We've been here before and taken lots of photographs, but this time I had my drone with me and wanted to get a different perspective with some aerial footage. Being fairly early in the morning, we had the place to ourselves. I could get the drone up and the job done without the inevitable whinge fest from any outraged sheriffs that may have appeared. It's not an actual cattleman's hut, but the reconstructed film set from the 1982 film The Man from Snowy River. No cattleman would ever build a hut here, on top of an open hill exposed to the elements, but what a view! That certainly is location, location, location. From there, we travelled westward, contouring near the top of Mount Stirling, and looking across the valley, the dry, snowless runs of the Mount Buller ski resort could be seen. roundabout route to get to our next planned campsite, Picture Point. Always endeavouring not to travel over ground we've already trod, we went past Bindery Falls, we'd seen in our previous trip, and headed for the 16-mile jeep track, as I'd heard it was a nice scenic drive, and because for a while it tracked alongside the Howqua River, we were able to scope out some beautiful campsites for future visits. This is the Howqua River, just off the 16-mile jeep track. At the end of the 16-mile jeep track, we turned onto the Bluff link track, leading into an interesting looking, on the map at least, track marked as Refrigerator Gap Track. I'm not making these up. When it came time to head for Picture Point, we took the track that would almost take us past Lovick's hut, as it's one of the iconic ones, and I wanted to check it out again. After Lovick's hut, just a couple of kilometres up the road to Picture Point in our home for the night. At an altitude of 5,238 feet, or 1,596 metres, this was to become our new highest campsite ever. And it got pretty cold that night. Apart from the views that it offered, I wanted to see this place for another reason. It's reputed to be the shooting location, or at least the area, where in the film Jim Craig, the man from Snowy River, leapt his horse down the side of an impossible hill after all other riders balked at it. It would have to be the iconic moment of the whole film. I'd love to think we had been there as well. Our drive today was only take us a further 63 kilometres, but it took us 5.5 hours to do it. For all that, I have very little footage, not because it wasn't worth filming, but because some of the tracks are pretty demanding and need your full attention, so much so that I often forget to hit the record button. This little bit along the Butcher Country track is all I have to show for the day. Spectacular views off the Butcher Country track. And a couple of stills of our campsite near the MacAlister River. The big popular ones up near where the Butcher track comes out were all taken, so we had to move downstream about 4 kilometres. But it was a nice enough spot, and we were only there for the night. And because we'd stopped early, we took the opportunity to do some washing. As we travelled south from our campsite, we had to cross several feeder streams to the MacAlister River. None proved difficult, but the exit points weren't always immediately obvious. Another river crossing coming up. Alright, where's this go? Deep, but not too deep. Oh, someone's camped here. How are you, mate?
Hi.
He's setting up camp. What? Well, that was easier than I thought it was going to be. Okay, we're leaving Licola and heading for the Wellington River campsites. That's the Wellington River on our left there. You can't see it now. It's a bitumen road all the way up there, I believe, so that'll get us there well before we need to camp. So I'm going to push past that, go back into the hills and try and make for Horseyard Flat, but if that's a bridge too far, we'll find somewhere else closer. Licola is a beautiful little town, albeit very small, with one store that was barely stocked. Lots of lovely campsites along the river here. This bitumen road will allow us to make up a bit of time and get this boring section, well, it's not boring, but get this transit section out of the way quickly. No trip to this neck of the high country would be complete without visiting the Pinnacles. At 1,445 metres, or around 4,740 feet, high above the Wonnangata Valley, is the rocky escarpment of the appropriately named Eagle's Nest. At its easternmost point sits the Pinnacles fire lookout. On a clear day, you can see the Gippsland Lakes, some 70 kilometres away. The days don't get any clearer than this, and it affords stunning, almost 360-degree views of the area. It's just such a wow place. On a fine, clear day, that is. It can also be windswept and bitterly cold when it's got a mind to. Well, that's it for part one. It's not the end of our day, but the next item on our list is the descent down Billy Goat's Bluff track, and that's worthy of its own episode almost. So stay tuned for that as we descend back down to the valley floor and make our way to Dargo for a resupply.